They said I'd feel proud the day I came home. They said I'd be welcomed like a hero, remembered, embraced, and honored by the people who waited. But no one ever warned me that sometimes, the people waiting at the gate are smiling only because it's polite, not because they're actually glad you came back. It had been nearly 6 years since I last saw the chipped paint on the old front porch, or smelled that mixture of motor oil and dried leaves that always lingered near our driveway. I'd imagined this moment 100 different ways while lying in my bunk or crouched behind rubble in cities I'd never heard of before deployment. I told myself that whatever pain I felt out there would be worth it once I stepped back onto home soil, that my family would be proud to see me, to hold me, to finally say out loud that I'd become someone they could respect. As I walked toward the house with a dusty duffel slung over one shoulder, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the familiar yard, the door flew open before I could even knock. My mother's voice cracked the silence, not with words, but with a kind of strangled cry I hadn't heard since I left for basic. She was on me in seconds, arms wrapped so tightly around my chest that I had to shift my footing just to stay upright, her tears soaking into the patch on my shoulder like they had a right to be there. "Oh, my baby boy is home!" She sobbed into my neck, her voice both trembling and oddly rehearsed, like she'd played this scene in her head a dozen times and just needed to say the lines. Behind her, my father stood stiffly in the doorway, one hand resting against the frame, his other buried deep in his pocket. His face didn't change much, no tears, no words really, just a nod that felt more like an obligation than any kind of heartfelt welcome. "Well," he said after a beat, "you made it back, huh?" His tone was neutral, not unkind, but certainly not warm. He patted me once on the back, turned, and walked inside. Travis, my older brother by 4 years, came around from the side of the house with a beer in hand and a grin that never quite reached his eyes. "Look at you, soldier boy," he chuckled, pulling me into a one-armed hug that felt more like a headlock. "Back from the sandbox. You look taller. Angrier maybe. Damn man, good to see you." Even Sophie, my cousin, bounced down the front steps like a kid at Christmas, waving her phone and squealing. "There he is! The man of the hour! Can we get a quick selfie? My followers love a good homecoming." And just like that, I was inside, sitting on the same couch I used to nap on during high school, listening to everyone talk over one another about how glad they were to have me back, how they'd been praying for me, how proud they were. They asked about my unit, whether I had any cool stories, if I'd seen combat, though their eyes darted nervously whenever I hesitated. I could tell they weren't really prepared for real answers. At first, I let it all wash over me. The smiles. The pats on the back. The forced enthusiasm. I told myself it was normal. That they didn't know how to handle this. That I just needed to adjust and everything would fall back into place. But something about the way they looked at me didn't sit right. It wasn't the kind of pride I had hoped for. It was more like watching someone return a borrowed car. They were happy I was back, but only because it meant they didn't have to worry anymore. I tried not to overthink it. Instead, I threw myself into helping them, telling myself that proving I was useful would help me feel like I belonged again. I mowed the lawn every morning before the sun got too high. I took Mom's car to get the brakes fixed. I repainted the back fence with Travis and helped him file a stack of paperwork he said had been piling up for months. He told me it was just some boring family estate stuff. Things about our late grandfather's property, legal signatures needed to keep it from being taxed to death. I barely skimmed the forms before signing them, trusting my brother the way I used to when we were kids. Sophie asked me to be in her videos. Just a few seconds, nothing crazy. She said her engagement numbers would go through the roof if she had a real American hero in the frame. She dressed me up in my old uniform, had me stand behind her while she did makeup tutorials and called it a patriotic vibe. I laughed about it at the time, trying to be a good sport. But the truth is, it started to wear me down. Not all at once. Slowly. Quietly. Like water eroding stone. They never asked how I was sleeping. They never asked what I'd seen. They never asked about the men who didn't come back. They just kept smiling. One night, I was coming down the stairs and overheard Mom in the kitchen, on the phone with one of her friends. She didn't know I was nearby, and her voice was as casual as if she were reading a grocery list. "He's sweet, bless him, but honestly, he's just aimless now. I really thought the military would straighten him out and give him some direction, but he just looks tired all the time. Travis already offered to help him get something started, but I doubt he'll follow through. I think he needs therapy, honestly. Or just a job, any job." The words hit like shrapnel. I froze on the stairwell, one foot hovering above the next step, heart thudding like it had back in the desert when mortars landed too close. In that moment, something cracked. The illusion shattered. I wasn't the returning hero. I wasn't even someone they respected. I was a burden. An obligation. That same week, Travis handed me an envelope at the breakfast table with a satisfied look on his face. "Hey, just a heads up, I went ahead and finalized the sale on Granddad's property. Remember the stuff I had you sign? That was part of it. Sold it to a developer. Pretty sweet deal." I blinked. "You sold the land?" He nodded, sipping his coffee like this was the weather forecast. "Yeah. Easier that way. You don't have any plans to farm it or build anything, right? I figured I'd just take care of it, and since you signed off, it's all wrapped up. I'll toss you a couple $100 for your time." I didn't respond right away. My jaw locked. My heart burned. I remembered walking those fields with my grandfather as a kid, picking up stones, learning how to dig straight lines for planting. That land was supposed to be passed down, not parceled off and flipped for profit. "You lied," I said finally, voice barely above a whisper. Travis gave a short laugh. I streamlined. "It's not like you were gonna use it." I stood, pushed the chair back without a word, and walked outside. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just sat beneath the old oak tree in the backyard, fists clenched in my lap, breathing in the silence like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, every breath harder than the last, trying to remember when I stopped being their son and started being just another mouth to feed. Even Sophie texted me late that night, asking if I could wear my uniform one more time for a 4th of July photo shoot. She said it would help her numbers. That's all I was to them now, a prop. A brand. A signature on a line. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't beaten. Not yet. I started paying attention. Quietly. Methodically. I collected screenshots of Sophie's posts where she used my name and image without asking. I reviewed the land paperwork, requested records, and confirmed that the property had sold for nearly $470,000. My share? A $200 Visa gift card Travis left on the counter with a sticky note that said, "Thanks, bro." I kept everything. I made backups. I talked to people. I asked questions. And slowly, I started to understand just how deep the betrayal ran. It wasn't just neglect. It was calculated. They used my return as an excuse to get what they wanted. Travis wanted money. Sophie wanted attention. Mom wanted to look like a perfect mother. Dad just wanted me quiet and out of his way. But they underestimated me. They thought I was just a quiet, broken soldier who would accept scraps and smile through the pain. They forgot what I'd been trained to do. They forgot I had nothing left to lose. There's something unnatural about being surrounded by people you've known your whole life and realizing, suddenly, fully, that not a single one of them sees you as a person anymore. Not a brother. Not a son. Not even a man. Just a tool. A background piece. A means to a selfish end. After Travis sold off Granddad's land and handed me that pathetic little gift card like it was a favor, I stopped trying to blend in. I stopped laughing at their fake jokes. I stopped saying sure when they asked for help. But more than that, I started to listen. Not like I used to, politely, passively, but sharply, with the same kind of alertness I'd developed in places where the next sentence could cost lives. And what I heard, when I finally paid attention, was so much worse than I thought. One evening, I was in the garage, pretending to sort through some old military gear I'd kept in storage. The window was cracked, and through it, I could hear voices from the kitchen just inside, Mom's soft but impatient tone, Dad's gruff muttering, and the metallic clink of silverware hitting plates. I froze as I heard my name. "I don't get why he's still here," Dad was saying. "It's been weeks. He hasn't even tried to get a job." "Gary," Mom replied, her voice laced with that fake concern she used in church meetings. "He's adjusting. It's not easy, you know. But Travis said he'd help line something up for him if he ever gets off his rear and shows interest." "I lined something up already," Travis chimed in. "I gave him a chance to be part of the deal. He didn't read the paperwork, not my fault." They all laughed. They actually laughed. "Maybe he's not built for the real world," Mom added. "Some people can't come back. They don't know who they are anymore." And just like that, in a few sentences, my entire existence was reduced to a burden, a joke, and a failed project they'd given up on. I stood there behind the garage door, fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms, heart thundering like it did during the worst deployments. I'd survived ambushes and watched men die, but this. Hearing your own family dismiss you like trash, this was something different. Something colder. But here's the thing they didn't know. I wasn't broken. Not truly. I had been shaken, yes. Lost, maybe. But the discipline they hated, the quiet calculation they mistook for passivity, those things hadn't faded. They'd only gone silent, waiting for a reason to wake up. And now they were wide awake. I started spending more time outside the house, not because I needed air, but because I needed space to think. I'd walk for miles through the backroads around town, tracing my thoughts like battle lines, trying to separate the rage from the strategy. That's when I started talking to Emily again, really talking. She was the only person who hadn't looked at me like I was a shadow of someone else. And she listened. God, she actually listened. One night, after walking past the church where we used to sneak into the bell tower as teenagers, I called her and asked if we could meet. I didn't tell her everything over the phone. I just said I needed to talk. We met at the old diner near the edge of town, the one where the walls were still covered in Polaroids of high school teams and dusty Christmas garlands that never got taken down. Emily had already ordered coffee for both of us, just like old times. She didn't say much at first. Just wait. Let me sit there, staring into the steam curling off the cup. And finally, I told her. About the land. About the fake welcome. About the video schemes. About the way they laughed behind my back, thinking I was too stupid to notice how little I mattered. And when I finished, she didn't give me pity. She didn't gasp. She didn't hug me. She said flatly, "Then let's take it back." At first I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "You want justice," she said. "Good. We'll get it. You want to take back what they stole? Then stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Stop thinking they'll suddenly see your value. We go legal. We go loud. You said Travis forged those forms? Then we find proof. You said Sophie used your image? That's unauthorized monetization. You said your grandfather left you that land verbally? Then let's dig into his will." Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It was sharp. Focused. And something about hearing it from her. Hearing someone finally believe me, finally stand with me, it unlocked something. That night, we started the plan. I began gathering evidence more aggressively. I pulled emails from Sophie, including one where she'd said, "My followers are eating this up. He doesn't even care I'm using him, lol." I saved video clips that used my uniformed image without permission. I visited the county recorder's office and requested a copy of the deed transfer paperwork, where Travis had conveniently left off a witness signature, a small detail, but a vital one. I even checked bank statements, and noticed the land money was dumped directly into his personal account, not a shared estate fund. And just when I thought I had enough to build a case, Emily introduced me to someone she knew. Detective Harris, a quiet, broad-shouldered man who'd served in the Navy before joining law enforcement. He reviewed my documents without blinking, asked 3 questions, and said calmly, "This isn't just shady, it's illegal. You've got them, son. You just need to be willing to press." That was the moment it all became real. I wasn't just thinking about revenge anymore. I was building it. Document by document. Proof by proof. And if you've ever been through something like this, if the people who were supposed to protect you turned out to be smiling thieves, then you already know what I felt. That strange, powerful clarity when you stop trying to be understood and start preparing to be remembered. A few weeks passed, and I didn't let on that anything had changed. I smiled when they wanted me to. I nodded when Travis brought up his new truck, bought with the money he'd stolen. I helped Mom clean out the garage and listened as she reminisced about simpler times, never acknowledging the bitterness in her voice when she mentioned how hard things were. Before Travis stepped up. And when Sophie asked me to pose with a flag for a sponsored post, I did it, but only after screenshotting every request, every DM, every payout report she accidentally left open on her laptop while gushing about brand partnerships. Behind the scenes, though, it was all being copied, cataloged, and added to the case file. The more I collected, the clearer it became, this wasn't just about me. This was a pattern. A lifetime of manipulation, dressed up in smiles and Sunday dinners. My family had learned to twist, to step over the softest hearts in the room, and I had been the easiest target for too long. No more. One night, Emily and I met again, this time in the back office of the school where she worked. She laid out the file we'd built together on the table like it was evidence for a trial. Because soon, it would be. "You're not just going after your brother anymore," she said, glancing at the names in the file. "Your whole family's going to feel this." "I know," I answered, my voice steady. "I want them to. And if you're following this story right now, and you've ever had to sit at a dinner table with people who smiled at you while quietly stealing your dignity, then do one thing right now, don't let it slide. Don't let it fester. Stand up. Speak up. And while you're here, hit subscribe because I promise you, this story is just getting started." The final piece fell into place during a local community event, a fundraiser at the town hall, where Sophie had been invited to speak about her veteran cousin and how she used her platform to support returning heroes. She didn't even ask if I wanted to be part of it. She just assumed I'd stand beside her, nodding, clapping, playing the mascot again. I agreed to attend. Wore the same uniform they loved parading me around in. Took my place next to her on stage. And while she smiled and spouted rehearsed lines about family and sacrifice and supporting our troops, I looked out into the crowd, scanning for one face in particular. Detective Harris was standing in the back. So was the town lawyer. Everything was in motion. And by the time the applause died down, Sophie had no idea the documents were already filed. The lawsuit had already been submitted. The cease and desist on her social media was on its way. And Travis, smiling smugly near the punch table, didn't know his bank accounts were about to be frozen pending investigation. Because when the truth hits, it doesn't knock first. It crashes through the door. And after everything they'd done to me, every lie, every laugh, every calculated theft hidden beneath a fake smile, I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to bury them with facts. With law. With the kind of calm, unstoppable revenge no one sees coming. They say revenge is best served cold, but what they don't say, what they should say, is that real revenge isn't about shouting, or fists, or making someone cry. It's about control. Silence. Timing. It's about walking into a room full of people who once used you like a broken tool, and watching their confidence shatter one expression at a time when they realize they've underestimated you. After Sophie's speech at the fundraiser, her carefully rehearsed performance about supporting her veteran cousin, the shift didn't happen immediately. There was no explosion, no gasp from the crowd, no dramatic accusations under bright lights. But as she stepped off the stage, laughing and soaking up applause, her phone vibrated in her back pocket. She didn't know that notification wasn't another fan message or brand offer. It was a takedown request. Filed officially. Signed. Stamped. And legally enforced. One by one, her posts started to vanish from the platform. The videos using my face, the stories exploiting my time in service, the thumbnails with my name front and center. All gone. Deleted. Blocked. And when she tried to appeal it, she found her account locked for unauthorized use of military representation and identity theft for profit. Her sponsors dropped her by the next morning. The first domino had fallen. And that was just the start. I didn't sleep that night, but not out of anxiety. I stayed up watching it all unfold, not with glee or gloating, but with a quiet, steady sense of balance being restored. I read over the emails I'd forwarded to the lawyers, the text messages, the forged land transfer forms, all the pieces of the life they thought they'd stolen cleanly, now transformed into evidence stacked like bricks in a wall they couldn't climb. Travis didn't notice anything wrong until 3 days later, when he tried to pay for a $9,000 deck renovation and his card declined. He called the bank. He yelled. He accused. But it didn't matter. The accounts were frozen. Temporarily, they said. Just until the fraud investigation was complete. He called me next. That was his mistake. Hey, he barked, not even bothering with a greeting. Did you say something to the bank? They're holding my money. This is serious, man. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I didn't even smile. I told the truth. I said, keeping my voice calm, controlled, and absolutely merciless. You forged documents and sold a property that wasn't yours. That's fraud, Travis. That's a felony. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear his breath shift, the way it always did when he realized someone had the upper hand. Then the bravado came back. Come on, bro, don't do this. It was a business decision. You signed it. It's not personal. No, I said. It was very personal. And now it's also legal. He hung up. He didn't call again. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt calm. When I walked into the courthouse with Emily and Detective Harris by my side, I didn't feel like a victim. I didn't feel like someone who'd been cast out by his family. I felt like a man who had rebuilt himself out of the rubble they left behind. I filed the lawsuit. Not just against Travis, but against Sophie for image exploitation, and even my parents, for knowingly facilitating an illegal transfer of property and financial abuse of a returning service member. Yes. That's what the lawyer called it. Abuse. I had to sit in a room with legal professionals who didn't know me, didn't care about my background, and watch them nod seriously, solemnly, as they looked through the case I built, because on paper, my life was no longer just sad. It was provable. It was criminal. And I had every right to press forward. If you're still here, following this story, maybe you've been betrayed too. Maybe the ones who were supposed to protect you saw you as a pawn, a wallet, a workhorse, or a face to wear like a mask. If that's you, then don't wait to fight back. Let your pain sharpen into purpose. And while you're here, subscribe. Because I'm not finished yet. The town, small as it was, didn't know what to do when the news hit. People don't like hearing bad things about good-looking families who attend church every Sunday and bring potato salad to bake sales. But the truth didn't care about appearances. And when the investigation started, it came fast and hard. Travis had lied on multiple documents, forged my initials on 3 separate forms, and even deposited the buyer's payment through a shell account in his fiancée's name. Sophie had made more than $12,000 using videos, ads, and brand partnerships that used my likeness, some of them implying I was promoting products I'd never even heard of. And my parents? They turned a blind eye to all of it. Not out of ignorance, but because convenience was easier than confronting their favorite child. I expected them to deny everything. I expected them to fight. But what I didn't expect, what shocked me, was the moment I walked into the mediation room and saw my mother crying. Real tears. Not the kind she forced out when I came home with a medal and a limp, but the kind that left her eyes red, her face raw, and her mouth quivering as she looked at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. "I didn't know," she said, her voice small. "I swear to God, Nathan. I didn't know he did that." I wanted to believe her. For a second, just 1 second, I wanted to wrap it all up neatly and pretend the betrayal was one person's fault. But then I remembered the phone call. The conversations I overheard. The nights they laughed about me behind a wall of politeness. "You knew," I replied. "You just didn't care." She sobbed harder. Dad didn't speak at all. And in that silence, 1,000 moments came crashing down. Birthdays missed. Calls ignored. The land I was promised turned to profit. My name dragged through digital mud. And all for what? Because I didn't come back rich? Because I came back quiet? Because they didn't understand what 6 years of war had taken from me? I looked them all in the eyes, Travis, Sophie, my parents, and said the one thing none of them expected. "I forgive you." The lawyer blinked. Emily looked at me like I'd grown another head. But I wasn't finished. "I forgive you," I said again, louder now, stronger. "Because I refuse to carry your rot inside me. I'm not doing this for revenge anymore. I'm doing this because I deserve peace. I deserve to move on. And I will." There was no clapping. No applause. But I didn't need it. The settlement came a month later. Travis had to pay restitution. Sophie's channel was demonetized. My name was cleared. The property, what remained of the sale value, was split retroactively. And with that money, I didn't buy a car. I didn't take a trip. I bought a small cabin at the edge of town, away from everyone. I built a new garden, 1 row at a time. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt like the land beneath my feet was actually mine. Emily visits often. She brings coffee. Sometimes we sit on the porch in silence. Other times we talk about life, healing, pain, and the future. She says I should write a book. I say I already told the story I needed to tell. And if you're still listening now, this is the part you remember. When they use you, they think you'll stay quiet. They think their smiles will hide their crimes. But the moment you stop doubting yourself, the second you start believing that your story matters, that's the moment they lose. So speak up. Take back what's yours. And if no one believes you at first, remember, I'm proof that they will. You're not alone. And I promise you, the ones who break you will never know what it's like to watch you rebuild.